Hello everybody and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where we were working on this truck design, and I just had a dumb idea to just put wings on it instead of putting it on a boat. I don't think this is a good idea, to be clear, but I kind of want to try it because I think it's hilarious. So we would put, like, airplane wings on this, right? And the idea here is we would want to, like, maximize the size of them. And they're also facing the wrong direction. And that's mostly because we need to turn the entire craft around. It's kind of facing backwards right now. What's considered the core part here? I assume it's this right here. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to turn that entire thing around 180 degrees. Then I'm going to grab this guy, and we're going to move him back to be about there. Now, I haven't solved the disembarking procedure of this yet. That is definitely something that should be solved eventually. But for right now, wow, it flipped the wings around backwards again. Okay, that's exciting. Let's just flip them this way. And we would need to largely maximize the size of these wings, which is going to be a little awkward, to be sure. But that would end up being something kind of like this. I don't know what that square, or I guess rectangular shape would actually end up doing. I have no idea if this would be enough lift to get this off the ground. And I'm also wondering where we would go ahead and attach any... let's just move this wing to be something like this. But I'm wondering where we would attach any jet engines for this, or store jet fuel. I mean, we could store jet fuel in the wings. So, I mean, we would have that be jet fuel there. But I kind of doubt, and yeah, you can see there, the mirroring is definitely a little off here. So that means that this is probably not perfectly centered. That's fine, I guess. We could take this and move it over a little bit to be like there or so, approximately. But we're still going to have some slight issues here. We can adjust that later on. For now, I don't think this is going to work. To be clear, this is a very, very, very dumb idea. But we could put some we could put some, like, turbofans on this, in theory, and have them be located, like, up here or so. Again, this is probably a terrible idea. I have no idea what the aerodynamic characteristics of this are going to be, and we would need to duplicate this because we cannot actually mirror it. Wait a sec. Uh-huh. Well, that's terrible. Okay, I don't want this to be in radial then. I want this to be in... We're going to have to just disable that. Okay. So then let's ditch this. Let's change the positioning out over on this side to be something like that approximately. Okay, and then I want to change the positioning of this engine here a bit. I'd like it for the engine to be underslung, but I think we're going to have it be overslung if this has any chance whatsoever of working. Pro tip, it does not have any chance whatsoever of working. So radial symmetry puts our engine on the wrong side. Mirror symmetry changes it a little too much as well. So we're going to have to do this with manual symmetry here. So that, of course, means that we're going to need to place this guy out over here. We're going to need to rotate it like so. There we go. And then we're going to have to duplicate this, and we're going to have to set the positionings of these correctly. Okay, so this is going to be at 0.95 is the correct Y position, but we're going to need the Z position to be this, but positive. Or the X position, rather. To be this, but positive. Like that. Then we're going to need to grab the Z position, and that's going to be the same. No, don't move that. That's going to be the same. Like that. Then we're going to need to make sure that these are in the same position here. So X, except this needs to be negated. There we go. And then Y, and we're going to have some balance issues here. We can address those later if this thing even gets off the ground. I would be shocked if this thing got off the ground. Okay, let's put this out on the DSC secondary runway. This is going to be very dumb. Okay, so at this point, we need to activate these engines. So I'm going to manually activate these, like so. And we're going to roll down this way. Oh, look at that. That thing actually moved a bit. Fascinating. Okay. Are you active? Oh, no, you're not. Okay. No wonder we're having issues here. Well, that's one way to deliver the crate, I guess. So the issue was that only one of these engines was turned on. Which is fine, of course. Okay. So the question is, can we get this up to an appropriate speed to take off, right? I'd be pretty surprised. This is without a payload, by the way. It's trying to turn quite a lot. Okay. That's very interesting physics. So this is probably because this here is not well centered. So let's go ahead and pull this back. Again, I think this is a terrible idea, but it's an interesting one anyway. So these here need to be set to be... Let's see, the input is set to auto right now. I would like this to be set to pitch, but this is going to cause us a bit of an issue. We might need to invert the pitch on these, because I'm thinking about how exactly this would work. So accelerating would mean doing that, and decelerating would mean doing that. Okay, this is moving a lot more now, I'm noticing. Okay. So let's go ahead and activate both of these jet engines here. And we're having some serious going straight issues right now. No doubt about that. This thing careens a lot if we try to do this. Okay. And we're going to have a hard time getting this up to speed, that's for sure. Especially with these sorts of offsets, right? So this isn't terribly shocking. This is happening because we have differing offsets here and here. So what we need to do is we need to pull this back, and we need to change our bed here. So I'm going to detach this, I'm going to detach each of these wings, and I'm going to detach these lifters here, and then we're going to fully detach this. Now this should be completely even at this point. And we would need a new bed here. We would need to go into, where are we? We need to go into here. So I want to have a structural panel here, right? And this structural panel would need to be set up kind of like this. Okay, that's the most thickness it can be. I don't actually want it to be that thick, so we're going to rotate this. We're going to rotate it like that, but it's also going to need to have a fair amount of additional rotation, right? So it's going to need to be rotated. Okay, these rotations are awkward because it's going in 15-degree increments, and I don't necessarily want that. We want this to be at, yeah, this is a really weird rotation here. 0, 90, 90 is the way we want that to be rotated. Okay, now what I want is I want to not do that. Undo. Okay, we have to be back in here. 0, 90, 90. Okay, there we go. Now, in terms of position, we could have the positioning of it be about here. The main problem with this, of course, is if we move this, it's going to be problematic for us. And the reason why it's going to be problematic is the same reason we've got these at an angle. So, I want to grab this, and I want to move these to be at least straighter. I'd like them to be perfectly straight. So I'm actually going to remove this, and I'm going to use struts instead for these axles. So that's going to go in about here at about 90 degrees, like that. And then we can attach this guy here, like that. Now the question is, what's our vertical position compared to these wheels? Okay, so our Y position is minus 0.185. This is minus 0.209. So that means that this needs to go up a little bit. Yeah. So minus 0.209 needs to be the positioning there. Actually, that's down slightly. Okay, that is fine. So now we can mirror this like that. And then we can do the same thing down here. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to duplicate this guy. And that's going to go in right back here or so at a 90-degree angle. Duplicate this guy. And we're going to position that at minus 0.209. There we go. Then we, of course, are going to need to mirror this. Yeah. Now, my question is, at this point, if we were to move this out to maximum and this out to maximum, as well as this out and this out, and then we were to move this, right? Would this allow us to move back and forth with us already being at maximum? It would. Okay. I want to move that only along this axis. I want this to be perfectly straight from here. So the question is, how do we... I'm wondering if there might be something in here that we can work with. Apparently not. Okay, so this is connected mode. This is in local direction. Sure. Part shape tool. Okay, that doesn't appear to be what we want. So we've got this structural panel here. Toggle all attach points. That's interesting, but it's not exactly what we're looking for. I suppose one thing we could do is, instead of attempting to resize this structural panel, we could simply duplicate it and put in a new structural panel here, which is correctly rotated, right? So that would need to come out over this direction and be rotated like this. We know that the rotation should be 0, 90, 90. So that's one way that we could do this, is we could make this out of a series of panels. Something like that. So then we could have 2 additional panels, with one going in here, which again we know should be 0, 90, 90. And then positioning that like so. And then one more panel up over this direction, which is not wanting to connect where I want it to connect. I guess that works? Sure. I guess that works. Okay, then we can come in and we can attach this wing. And attach this wing. Like that. We're going to need to make sure that these are at the correct positions here. So I'm going to say -2 and 2. This is going to be -4 and -4. And then I'm just going to put this at 0 and 0, like that. Then we can grab this guy, and I don't actually want it to be attached here, so we're just going to position it manually on here. Now, this is going to easily fall off at this point. That is a problem, and we will solve that problem later. Now I'm going to reattach these guys here. We know that we need to rotate it like that. Okay, just trying to get this attached in. There we go. And the positioning on these is going to have to change, of course. So we're going to set this to be, okay, -0.75 seems okay. Y position of, like, -2? No, that's the wrong direction. Like 1. Somewhere around there. Okay, so this was 0.75, and the Z position for both of these is theoretically fine. Okay, let's put this out on the pad and see what it does. This is not going to work, I don't think, but obviously we're going to need a way to constrain the crate, right? As of right now, it's just sitting there, and as you can see, it likes to wiggle around a little bit. So that's understood. I'm activating our engines here. It's still veering off to the side. So that's definitely noted. Okay, it's veering a lot off to the side. There goes the crate. Noted. It really does not like driving straight. That's theoretically fine. My question is, what is takeoff speed for this contraption? Whoa. Okay. Well, that was almost takeoff speed. To be sure. I have no idea what this direction that we're going is. And of course, that's not ideal. I'm surprised it didn't break everything there. That's shocking. Okay, so let's solve some of these other problems. So let's undo and exit this. And specifically, the problems that I want to solve is constraint on this. So one thing that we could do, this is going to constrain this in on this side, so that should not be a problem. And we would just need a small amount of constraint over here on each side. And then one on the back, but the one on the back would need to be removable. So that would be interesting. So we've got these structural panels here, right? And these could theoretically, we could just constrain this in like this or so. Now, this is a little much, but it would end up being something kind of like that. And then we could rotate this to be like so. And we could have a series of these, right? So this would be attaching like down over here, with the rotation not being like that, but rather like this. Okay, so we could just have like a couple of these. So one would go over here. One would go over here. And then one would go like up here. About like that. So that would be intended to hold that in. We're not going to put one on this side just yet because that's going to need a different solution. And I'm wondering, can we mirror these? No. Okay. Radial isn't going to work. Mirror is also not going to work. Actually, yeah, thanks. I hate it. That's awful. Okay. So we're just going to position this like so then. There we go. And we'll just have to duplicate this. We could use that quick mirror tool, but I'm not going to bother with that. We're going to position this out over here. We're going to do another one, and we'll just copy the positions to make sure it's symmetrical. We'll do that manually. Yeah, I want it attached here. And then one out over this way. Okay. So now we're going to need to copy the positions, which is easy enough. So I'm going to grab this guy, and this is an X position of 2, Y position of 0, negative 5.5. So we can come in here, and this would be negative 2, 0, negative 5.5. There we go. This one would be 2, 0, negative, we'll call it 3. Did not want to move that. That just undid everything. Amazing. Cool. Negative 2, 0, negative 5.5. Okay. And then we'll grab this. 2, 0, negative 5.5. There we go. This is 2, 0, and we're going with negative 3. There we go. And this is going to be -2, 0, and -3. Excellent. So this one is -2, 0, and I'm going to put this at 0. That's not what I wanted to grab. And this undid all of our movements again. I really wish it did things one step at a time. That would be nice. Alas, it does not do that. I'll be honest, that's pretty irritating. -2, 0, -5.5. Okay. So this is, of course, going to be 2, 0, -5.5. This one is going to be 2, 0, -3. -2, 0, -3. -2, 0, 0. 2, 0, 0. -2, 0, 2.5. And 2, 0, 2.5. Okay. There we go. I'm going to save this. Now, this can still be removed going this direction, right? It can still come off of the trailer this way. And that's fine for the moment. I just don't want it to come off of these sides. So let's put this out on the secondary runway. I have a feeling that we're still going to have some issues with positioning this. But let's go ahead and activate these two engines, and let's go. Yeah, it definitely wants to come off of that side, and you can see it's still trying to pull off to one side or the other. We have a bit of a hard time with that. Ah, this might be why. Yeah, look at that heading. Okay. So that could be delivered that way, in theory, but, I mean, it was destroyed. That's fine. I want to retry our undo. I'm pretty sure that that heading is the reason why we're having an issue. So let's set our heading to be 135 here. Okay. I'm going to activate these engines. And let's throttle them up. Now, I'd still be surprised if this thing gets airborne, and we're still going to have a problem with the crate falling out of the back. That is something we will need to solve, and I'm not sure how we're going to solve that. Because we're also going to need it to not fall out of the back, but wow, this thing really likes to spin on the ground. Okay, that's probably something to do with our center of thrust, is my guess. Okay, so that leaves behind the crate like that, sure. Okay. Don't lock current heading. Don't bother with that. I want to just manually drive this thing. Okay. So we didn't quite have enough speed to nose up there. That's certainly noted. But that's interesting. That is an interesting result right there. Obviously, that was a problem. But if we can solve the issue of veering off to the side, I think we can largely fix this. Now, we're not going to have any turning capacity. We don't have a rear to this, right? So that's all going to be a bit problematic. And I'm just checking these turbofans here. Okay. Let's move our way down this runway for now, and we'll see if we can control our speed any better, or rather our direction any better. We might need to have these up here steer as well. Ooh, okay. So at this point, I think a big part of our problem is the crate rocking around back here. So we could potentially put in some, like, clamps or something. That's a theoretical option. My question is, do we even have enough lift being generated here? And I don't know the answer to that. This is still a very dumb idea, for the record. It's working a lot better in terms of going straight until the payload moves. So one thing we could do is we could put some clamps up here on top of each of these. which is certainly an interesting option. Okay, this I thought was a ramp. It's not a ramp. Okay, let's pull this back, and let's think about clamping this thing into place a little bit. So, the way that I would end up doing that, most likely, is I would like to use some fairly small landing gear. So that would end up being something like these guys, I think, but I would like it to be much smaller. So that would end up being, in terms of length, down to 0. Or rather 10%. And you can see here, that's a little too much. So we would like to turn that size down and then turn the length up to be somewhere around here or so. Okay, and then these would ideally end up being centered. This one is not, obviously, and that's because of the attachment point. I guess this is fine. So we would then duplicate this guy, and apparently there's not an attachment point over here. Odd. Okay. So we would just do something kind of like this. There we go. And then duplicate this one, attach it here, and these are just intended to provide pressure and hold this in position a little bit more. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to be very successful at that. So there's that. Also, I'm noticing that this side appears to be a little further away. So I want to see here. Okay, yeah, the X position is not centered here. There we go. So now the question is, are these reaching far enough? Looks like not quite. Let's move this up to a 30% size for each of these. And have it be something kind of like that. That's now reaching far enough. Okay, beautiful. So we'll make that be a 30% size, and we'll grab this guy, place it here. There we go. So something like that. That one isn't, I think, correctly angled, but that's okay. One more there, one more here as well. Hang on. Is that 90 degrees now? That looks like 90. This is not. This would need to be like that. Okay. And this one would need to be switched over a little bit too. Okay. Not all of these are lined up. That's better. There we go. Something along the lines of that would be the idea. So these aren't really going to keep it in the back, right? But the idea here is that they keep it from rocking around too much inside. In theory. They at least damp it a little bit. Would be the hope. So something along the lines of that. And then we can activate these engines. Like so. And I don't want to lock our current heading right now. Okay. So steering is going to be a problem, but for now, our main concern is merely getting airborne. Okay. You can see that this is definitely rocking around, but the shock absorbers are holding it in place a little bit better. We still like to do that sort of nonsense. So that's a thing. And it fell out the back there, but that's not necessarily shocking. Okay. So let's just accelerate on up a bit here and see if we can get this thing off the ground. I know that we don't have our payload in here, and that's not necessarily ideal, but for the moment, let's just see if we can get this thing accelerated up. Okay. So accelerating is going fairly okay. Although we do pick up this sort of rotational turn, and we have a really hard time arresting this flat spin once it starts. Now, that's a problem kind of endemic to planes, so that's not necessarily shocking, but picking it up at all is, of course, problematic. So the way to handle that would be to put in additional control surfaces here. So I'm going to add another control surface to each of these. There we go. And this control surface is going to be set to roll out over here. There we go. Now, I'm thinking that these... What? Oh, right. I'm thinking that these need to no longer be inverted, and we can try something along the lines of that. Now, we can definitely think about some, like... We can think about some additional wings out over here or something, but for the moment, this is definitely making some progress here. So we can activate our clamps to hold all of this in place. There we go. And we know that they work, so that looks good. We can activate our engines. There we go. And our engine's activated, like, unevenly, which is understood. We need to change around our staging to make that happen a little bit better. But the main issue right now, of course, is simply this spin that we get. That we cannot deal with. We have no real way of dealing with that. Okay, and these are set to roll, but they're not inverted. So we're going to need to make some changes there. I actually think this is going to be viable, which is wild, but it is time to put a cut in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to continue to work on this, which is just absolutely insane. I cannot believe that this is actually quasi-working. We need to fix the spin, for sure. And we need to get this thing properly off the ground, and we need to get the staging set up correctly, but it's actually kind of seeming viable in a weird sort of way. So, for now, this is what we're going to be working on. It's a really, really bizarre delivery system, but here we are. We'll need to solve this rear area as well. I'll see what we want to do about that. I'm not sure yet. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Atala, Andy McGar, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Hiro Marutsu, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.